James Gunn's The Suicide Squad is out, and finally we got the numbers for the box office opening weekend for The Suicide Squad. Hey, welcome back to the Ping Pong Flix. My name is Chris Wong. The Hollywood Reporter is reporting box office. The Suicide Squad opens to lowly $26.5 million as moviegoers stay home amid Delta variant. Oh! Now heading into the weekends, Warner Brothers actually predicted a $30 million domestic box office opening weekend. And before that, tracking was about $30 to $60 million opening weekend. There are many different factors or different narratives people are talking about why this box office is so low. This is coming from the Hollywood Reporter. This weekend's performance of the Suicide Squad shows yet again the unpredictability of a theatrical marketplace whose success rises and falls, based on an ever-evolving set of disparate factors, including not only the usual film-centric metrics, but also the impact of concerning pandemic news on consumer behavior, says ComScore's Paul Degarabedian. Of course, the day-and-date release of any film has implications, but in today's environment, it's too simplistic to analyze a movie's performance based on that variable alone, since there are so many moving parts. And yes, this is making big news, including CNN, because of the whole Delta variant headline. It's a way to gauge whether people are comfortable going to the theaters, which could affect the box office and everything else. Which is true, because Delta variant is rising over in the United States and also international as well. There is a factor in that. Now let's look at the different factors people talk about in terms of audience score and it being R-rated. Over Rotten Tomatoes, overall certified fresh came in at about 92%, but audience score averaged about 85%, which is still really good by any movie standard. The cinema score, however, was a B+. Now, a lot of industry experts says B+ is not that good of a factor. Usually you want to be in the A range, but let's look into the R-rated factor. Now, the Suicide Squad did have the biggest R-rated opening during the pandemic, beating out Mortal Kombat's $23.3 million domestic box office opening weekend. But then again, it opened in more theaters than the other ones. Demon Slayer opened in 1,600 theaters, Mortal Kombat in 3,000 theaters, also Conjuring 3 in 3,100 theaters. The Suicide Squad opened in 4,000 theaters. Interestingly enough, Exhibitor Relations, an account that does all this box office reporting, have this to say. Warner Brothers' $185 million The Suicide Squad debuted with $26.5 million this weekend, or in other words, just $3 million more than Mortal Kombat earlier this year. I know, blah blah blah, pandemic blah 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 rating. Make no mistake, heads will roll, big changes coming for DC. Wow, what a thing to say. I didn't realize Exhibitor Relations tweets things like that. Even more interesting is somebody else commented on this and said this: "We are seeing the wrath of the Snyder Cut crew in action. A few months ago when Warner Bros. Said they weren't making a sequel to Zack Snyder's Justice League, the fans threatened a boycott, and now we are seeing the impact of their economic power. Expect a Zack Snyder's Justice League 2 announcement within weeks." So that's another narrative that's going out there on that Snyder fans have boycotted the movie, and that's why the number is so low. Even though there are Snyder fans who do love the movie, I like the movie, of course I don't speak for everyone. Now the first Suicide Squad opened to $133 million in the domestic box office opening weekend, which is crazy and insane. But that was back then. That was 2016. There's no pandemic, nothing like that. And it wasn't rated R either. So viewer and on an insider in the industry actually had an opinion on maybe a sequel-itis in terms of Suicide Squad, and he presented many different examples of this. People are arguing that you can't judge box office due to COVID. I present to you that domestically, movies are performing about as well as they would have without COVID. Give or take a day and date streaming release. Let's go back to the beginnings of the summer. A Quiet Place Part 2 opened to $47.5 million, down 5% from A Quiet Place's $50.2 million opening weekend. This is totally normal for the sequel to an overperforming horror movie. The Conjuring 2 opened to 4% less than The Conjuring, etc. The Hitman Wife's Bodyguard grossed $37.8 million, down about half from The Hitman Bodyguard's $25.4 million. Absolutely normal drop from this type of sequel. See also Red 90.3, Red 2 53.2. Now You See Me 117 million. Now You See Me 2, $65 million. Fast 9 opened to $70 million, nearly identical to F4's $70.9 million and above, Hobbs & Shaw's $60 million. F7 opened to $147.1 million. F8 to $98.7 million. The franchise was already in decline, and in fact, F9's 2.4 multiplier is right in line with Fast 5's 2.4 times. No simultaneous streaming. Black Widow is going to finish around $180 million. It's a prequel starring a character audiences saw die 2 years earlier. Han Solo premiered simultaneously on Disney+, and had lower reaction scores than the vast majority of MCU movies. Jungle Cruise opened to $35 million, nearly identical to another Rock CG fest, Rampage, and above other action movies of his like Skyscraper, and that's with a simultaneous Disney Plus launch. Which brings us to the Suicide Squad, where the writing was on the wall when it was announced. People didn't like the first. There's no Will Smith. It's another movie starring Harley Quinn with markedly better reviews, easily fresh on Rotten Tomatoes. But we've heard that story before. Birds of Prey opened to $33 million. The Suicide Squad's opening is nearly identical, with the difference clearly being the HBO Max release. So that's another variable that's being talked about, how it also has a day-and-date release over on HBO Max. Now currently Warner Brothers or HBO Max has not released any streaming numbers. Will they? Where's Zack Snyder's Justice League? But that could also factor in. So in order for the Suicide Squad to be a relative success, they would actually have to pull in more subscribers into HBO Max. However, HBO Max chief Andy Forssell revealed this. As the country faces new challenges due to the COVID variant, we're happy to continue to offer fans the option of viewing movies in their homes, the executive said. Many chose to do just that as Suicide Squad emerged as the second most viewed film over an opening weekend on HBO Max since we began day-and-date releases with theaters. But we'll see what happens after this weekend's over. Are they going to announce Suicide Squad 3? Are they going to announce anything? Let's wait and find out. But what do you think? Comment down below on what factors you thought affected the Suicide Squad box office opening weekend.